Millionaire's son was born deaf. What this homeless black woman did left everyone terrified. Security! Get this woman out of here now. Victoria's scream cut through the lobby of St. Andrew's Hospital like a blade. Two burly security guards were already advancing toward the black woman who was kneeling on the marble floor, her hands raised in surrender. Gloria was 52 years old, gray hair escaping from a faded headscarf, wearing clothes that smelled of nights spent sleeping on park benches. But her eyes shone with a lucidity that brutally contrasted with her appearance as a homeless woman. "Please just let me explain," Gloria pleaded. "Explain what?" Victoria advanced, her Louboutin heels echoing like hammers. "That you were touching my stepson? That you had your dirty hands near his ear?" In the corner of the lobby, sitting in a state-of-the-art wheelchair, was Ethan. 8 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes wide with confusion. He couldn't hear the screams. He couldn't hear anything. He had been born deaf, and the best specialists in the world had already declared irreversible neurological damage. Richard came running, his Armani suit wrinkled from rushing. At 45, the CEO of Harrison Industries was a man who controlled empires, but couldn't control the trembling in his hands when it came to his son. "What's going on here?" This vagrant was touching Ethan's ear. Victoria pointed at Gloria as if she were a dangerous animal. "I saw her with my own eyes. She stuck something in there." "I didn't put anything in." Gloria kept her voice steady despite the guards holding her arms. "I took something out. Something that shouldn't have been there." Richard frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Your son isn't deaf, sir. At least, not the way the doctors said." A strange silence fell over the lobby. Victoria let out a scornful laugh. "Did you hear that, Richard? A homeless woman who probably didn't finish high school is contradicting Harvard neurologists." But Richard wasn't laughing. Something about the way this woman spoke, without desperation, without madness, just with calm certainty, made him hesitate. "Call the police," Victoria ordered the guards. "I want this woman arrested for attempted assault on a minor." Gloria didn't resist when they started dragging her away. But before being taken, she looked directly at Richard. "Ask Dr. Morrison why he never did a complete otoscopy of the right canal. Ask why, in 8 years, no examination included a high-resolution auricular endoscopy." Richard felt a chill run down his spine. How would a homeless woman know these terms? "Who are you?" Gloria smiled, a sad and tired smile. "Someone who already lost everything once by trusting the wrong people, Mr. Harrison. Don't make the same mistake." The guards pushed her outside. The glass door closed. Gloria disappeared into the light rain that was starting to fall over the city. Victoria huffed, adjusting her platinum blonde hair. How absurd. "Come on, Ethan needs his speech therapy session." She pushed the wheelchair toward the elevator. Richard stood still, staring at the door through which Gloria had been taken. Dr. Morrison. The private neurologist who had been treating Ethan since birth. The same doctor who had recommended the clinic in Switzerland, the experimental treatments in Japan, the revolutionary therapies that cost fortunes and never worked. Richard grabbed his phone and dialed a number. "James, I need you to find out everything about a woman. Black, approximately 50 years old, apparently homeless. She was at St. Andrew's today. Probable name, Gloria. And James." He lowered his voice. "Do this without Victoria knowing." On the other side of the city, soaked to the bone, Gloria took shelter under the awning of a closed store. She opened her right hand and looked at what she had managed to remove from Ethan's ear before being interrupted. A small, dark, calcified mass. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself. 8 years. They let this grow inside him for 8 years. What no one at that hospital knew, not Richard, not Victoria, certainly not the guards who threw her onto the street, was that Gloria wasn't just a homeless woman. And what she had discovered about Ethan's deafness was just the tip of an iceberg that, when revealed, would destroy reputations, expose a multi-million-dollar medical conspiracy, and forever change the lives of everyone involved. But first, she needed to survive the night. And find a way to make Richard Harrison hear the truth before it was too late. If this story of secrets and injustice is capturing your attention, subscribe to the channel to discover what Gloria really found, and why some people would do anything to keep her silent. Richard couldn't sleep that night. The homeless woman's words echoed in his mind like a scratched record. Ask Dr. Morrison why he never did a complete otoscopy. How would a street woman know what type of exam his son had never received? At 6 in the morning, his private investigator called. I found your woman, Mr. Harrison. The name is Gloria Dawson. And you're going to want to sit down for this. Gloria Dawson. 52 years old. Medical degree from Johns Hopkins, one of the best schools in the country. Specialization in pediatric otolaryngology. For 15 years, she was head of the audiology department at Boston Central Hospital. Richard felt his blood run cold. What happened to her? 3 years ago, she was accused of medical negligence. A child patient died during a procedure. She lost her license, was sued, lost everything. Husband filed for divorce. House was auctioned off. Since then, she's been living on the streets. And the case? Was she convicted? That's the interesting part, sir. The charges were dropped for lack of evidence. But by then it was too late. Her reputation was destroyed. And guess who was the medical expert who testified against her in the trial? Richard closed his eyes. He already knew the answer before hearing it. Dr. Peter Morrison. Exactly. Richard hung up the phone. His hands were shaking. The doctor who had destroyed Gloria's career was the same one who had been treating his son for 8 years. Coincidence? Or something much worse? That same morning, Gloria woke up in a municipal shelter. She had gotten a last-minute spot thanks to a social worker she knew from when she was still someone. Sitting in the cafeteria with a cup of watery coffee, she mentally reviewed everything she knew. 2 weeks ago, by pure chance, she was begging in front of St. Andrew's Hospital when she saw Ethan being taken inside. The blonde boy in the wheelchair. The impatient stepmother. And that gesture, the gesture that made Gloria's heart stop. Ethan was touching his right ear repeatedly. A quick tap, a light rub, a grimace of discomfort. Gloria had seen that gesture hundreds of times in her career. It was the classic sign of physical obstruction in the ear canal. Not neurological damage. In the following days, she observed. Followed discreetly. Saw Ethan leave sessions with Dr. Morrison, always with the same blank expression. Saw Victoria signing checks for obscene amounts. Saw the pattern that no one else saw because no one else was looking. The previous afternoon, when she managed to get close to the boy in the lobby while Victoria was distracted on the phone, Gloria acted on instinct. Her fingers, which hadn't touched a patient in 3 years, found their way as if they had never stopped. She saw it. Deep inside the right canal, partially hidden by an anatomical curve, was a dark, calcified mass. Something a standard otoscopy wouldn't reveal. You needed a specific angle, a trained eye. Something Dr. Morrison certainly knew was there. Gloria clenched her fists. That man hadn't just destroyed her life. He was destroying a child's life. Keeping Ethan deaf on purpose to keep charging for useless treatments. Excuse me. Gloria looked up. A man in a gray suit stood before her. She recognized him immediately, the investigator who had photographed her the night before. Mr. Harrison wants to speak with you. Discreetly. Gloria studied the man for a long moment. And his wife. Mrs. Harrison doesn't know about this meeting. The gentleman was clear about that. Gloria nodded slowly. So Richard was willing to listen. It was more than she had expected. Tell him I accept. But with one condition. Which is? I want access to Ethan's complete medical history. All exams, all consultations, all reports from the last 8 years. The investigator frowned. That's confidential. That's essential. Gloria stood up, and for a moment, despite the worn clothes and disheveled hair, there was undeniable authority in her. If Mr. Harrison wants the truth about his son, that's the price. Tell him I have proof that Ethan doesn't need to be deaf. And also tell him that Dr. Morrison has known this for at least 5 years. The investigator swallowed hard. How can I be sure you're not just a crazy woman wanting money? Gloria smiled, the same sad smile from the day before. Research the Mitchell case, 2019. 6-year-old child, diagnosed with irreversible congenital deafness. Dr. Morrison was the specialist who signed the report. 3 years later, Another doctor discovered it was just a severe impacted cerumen blockage. And what happened? The parents sued. Morrison paid $1 million settlement in a confidential agreement. The case was buried. Gloria tilted her head. How many children do you think this man has kept deaf to line his own pockets? The investigator didn't answer. He didn't need to. Meanwhile, in Richard Harrison's luxurious office, Victoria entered without knocking. Darling, I just spoke with Dr. Morrison. He's concerned about yesterday's incident. He suggested we increase security around Ethan. Richard looked up from his computer, where he had just read about the Mitchell case. Security. Against people like that crazy homeless woman. Victoria rolled her eyes. He said people like that sometimes develop obsessions with rich children. It could be dangerous. Richard looked at his wife. The woman he had married 2 years after Emily's death, Ethan's mother. The woman Dr. Morrison had introduced him to at a charity gala. For the first time, he began to see connections he would rather not see. Victoria, how exactly did you meet Dr. Morrison? Something passed through her eyes. Too quick to identify. Fear? Surprise? Why the question? Curiosity. Victoria smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. He's my best friend from college's cousin. I recommended him when Ethan was born. You know that. Richard nodded slowly. He did know. But now he wondered how many other things he thought he knew were lies. The meeting took place in a security apartment Richard kept for confidential business. No records, no cameras, no trace. Gloria arrived clean for the first time in months. The shelter had showers, and she had gotten donated clothes that almost fit. She no longer looked like a homeless woman. She looked like what she had always been, a destroyed woman, but not defeated. Richard was waiting for her with a thick folder on the table. Ethan's complete medical history. I read everything, he said without preamble. 8 years of consultations. Hundreds of exams. Millions of dollars. His voice was hoarse. And you're right. There isn't a single high-resolution auricular endoscopy in any of these reports. Gloria leafed through the documents with expert eyes. With each page, her expression grew darker. This is worse than I thought. What? Look here. She pointed to a report from 5 years ago. This imaging exam shows a shadow in the right canal. It's noted as technical artifact, disregard. But this isn't an artifact. It's the obstruction. Richard leaned in, studying the image. You're saying Morrison saw this 5 years ago? Not only saw it. He noted by hand that it was to be disregarded. He knew, Mr. Harrison. He knew and chose to ignore it. Richard felt bile rise in his throat. 5 years. His son could have been hearing for 5 years. Why? Why would someone do this? Gloria placed the papers on the table. How much have you paid Morrison in these 8 years? Add it all up. Consultations, treatments, international trips, experimental therapies. Richard did the calculation mentally. The number made him stagger. Almost $4 million. And how much would you pay if Ethan were cured with a simple 15-minute procedure? Silence was the answer. Your son is a gold mine, Mr. Harrison. A chronic patient from a billionaire family. Morrison never intended to cure him. Only to manage a condition he himself was perpetuating. Richard sank into the chair. He thought of all the times he held Ethan, promising he would find a cure. All the nights he prayed for a miracle. And all along, the cure was just one procedure away. And Victoria? Gloria hesitated. I don't have concrete evidence about her. But. Morrison destroyed my career 3 years ago using false testimony. I sued him, tried to prove he had lied under oath. My lawyer managed to get some text messages before I lost everything. She pulled an old, cracked phone from her pocket. She showed the screen to Richard. The message was from an unidentified number to Morrison, dated 3 years ago. She's getting too close to the truth. Do whatever it takes to get her out of the way. V. Richard felt the ground disappear. V. At the time, I didn't know who it was. Now. Gloria looked at him with pity. I'm sorry. Richard was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steel. What do we need to destroy them? We need another doctor to examine Ethan. An independent doctor, with no connection to Morrison. And we need a recording. Recording of what? Of Morrison admitting what he did. People like him are arrogant. If confronted the right way, he'll defend himself. And in defending himself, he'll condemn himself. Richard nodded. When? Tomorrow. Morrison has a charity gala dinner at the Grand Central Hotel. All the medical elite will be there. Gloria allowed herself a cold smile. What better place for a public execution? The following night, the ballroom of the Grand Central sparkled with crystal chandeliers and haute couture dresses. Doctors, investors, and philanthropists circulated among champagne and canapés. Dr. Peter Morrison was the center of attention. At 58, gray hair impeccably combed, he received compliments for his tireless dedication to pediatric medicine. Victoria was at his side, stunning in an emerald green dress, laughing at the right jokes and touching the right arms. Neither of them noticed when Richard entered, or when Gloria, unrecognizable in a borrowed black dress and subtle makeup, positioned herself near the sound system. Richard walked directly to Morrison. Dr. Morrison. What a pleasure. The doctor smiled, extending his hand. Richard. I didn't know you were coming. How is our little Ethan? Actually, it's about him that I need to talk. In private. Morrison frowned, but maintained his professional smile. Of course. Let's go over to that corner. Victoria made a move to accompany them, but Richard raised his hand. Men's business, darling. I'll be right back. Something passed through her eyes. Suspicion. Fear. But she nodded. In the private corner, away from curious ears, but not from the recording running in Richard's pocket, the conversation began. Doctor, a woman approached me yesterday. A former doctor named Gloria Dawson. The name made Morrison choke on his champagne. Gloria? That woman is crazy, Richard. She was expelled from medicine for incompetence. You can't believe anything she says. She said Ethan has a physical obstruction in his ear, not neurological damage. Morrison laughed, but the laugh sounded forced. Absurd. You've seen the exams. The best hospitals in the world confirmed my diagnosis. The hospitals you recommended. I recommended the best. You recommended the ones that wouldn't ask questions. Morrison's smile disappeared. Be careful what you're insinuating, Richard. I'm not insinuating anything. Richard pulled a sheet from his pocket. This is the report from 5 years ago. The shadow you ordered to be disregarded. This afternoon, an independent otolaryngologist examined my son. Morrison went pale. You did what? Ethan had a calcified mass of wax and debris in his right ear canal. An 8-year obstruction. The doctor removed it in 20 minutes. Richard stepped forward. My son heard his own voice for the first time 3 hours ago, Dr. Morrison. He cried. I cried. And then I came here. Morrison stepped back, stumbling into a chair. Richard, you need to understand. These cases are complex. Diagnoses change. I never. You never what? Never saw the obstruction that's documented in your own report? Never thought to do a more thorough exam? Never considered that a simple cure was possible? I am one of the most respected doctors in the country. You are a criminal who stole 8 years of hearing from my son. Richard's voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. But something had changed in the atmosphere. The conversations around them had ceased. People were watching. And then, the ballroom speakers crackled. Gloria's voice echoed through the sound system, clear and firm. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Dr. Gloria Dawson. 3 years ago, the man you are honoring tonight destroyed my career with false accusations because I was getting too close to discovering his crimes. Today I have proof. Victoria dropped her glass. The crystal shattered on the marble floor. Dr. Peter Morrison kept a child intentionally deaf for 8 years to profit from unnecessary treatments. And he's not alone. Gloria looked directly at Victoria. The current Mrs. Harrison has been his accomplice from the beginning. The chaos was instantaneous. Phones appeared. Cameras flashed. Voices overlapped in a cacophony of shock and accusations. Morrison tried to run, but security guards, hired in advance by Richard, blocked the exits. Victoria was screaming, denying, pointing fingers, but no one was listening. Everyone was looking at the giant screen where Gloria had projected the reports, the messages, the irrefutable evidence. In the middle of the chaos, Richard stood motionless, looking at the woman he had called his wife. The woman who had introduced Morrison to him. The woman who had entered his life exactly when his son needed protection most. "Why?" was all he managed to ask. Victoria stopped screaming. For a moment, the mask fell completely. "Because you were too rich to resist, darling. And Ethan was the goose that laid the golden eggs." She smiled, an ugly, desperate smile, of someone with nothing left to lose. "If he were cured, I'd lose my usefulness. A devoted stepmother of a sick child is worth millions in a divorce. A stepmother of a healthy child? Worth nothing." Richard felt something inside him die. And something new being born in its place. "Get her out of here," he said calmly. "And call the police." 6 months later, Ethan Harrison's world was made of sounds. The noise of rain against his bedroom window. The bark of the golden retriever his father had finally let him adopt. The sound of his own laughter, something he still found strange and wonderful at the same time. But his favorite sound was Gloria's voice. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she came to the mansion for auditory therapy sessions. Ethan needed to learn to process sounds his brain had never interpreted before. It was slow, patient work, full of small victories. That afternoon, they were in the garden. Gloria was holding a wind chime, letting the metal rods tinkle softly. "How many sounds can you separate?" she asked. Ethan closed his eyes, concentrating. 4. No, 5. There's one that's higher than the others. Gloria smiled. His progress was extraordinary. "When I was little," she said, "my grandmother had a wind chime on the porch. I would spend hours listening. That's why I became an ear doctor. I wanted to give that sound to children who had never heard it." Ethan opened his eyes. "Are you happy to be a doctor again?" Gloria considered the question. 6 months ago, she was sleeping in shelters and begging in front of hospitals. Today, she had her medical license restored, a comfortable apartment, and a renewed purpose. "I'm happy I found you, Ethan. The rest came along with it." Richard appeared at the veranda door, carrying a tray with lemonade. He looked 10 years younger than on the night of the gala, as if an invisible weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Am I interrupting?" "Daddy." Ethan ran to him. He still marveled at the sound of his own footsteps on the grass. Richard ruffled his son's hair and looked at Gloria. The lawyer called. "Morrison's trial has been scheduled for next month. The prosecutor said with all the evidence, he should get at least 15 years. Gloria nodded in silence. There was satisfaction in that, but not joy. Morrison had destroyed too many lives for his downfall to be cause for celebration. And Victoria? Richard sighed. 10 years, probably. The prenup had a fraud clause. She won't see a penny from the divorce, and the criminal case for conspiracy is solid. Ethan had stopped running and was looking at his father with a seriousness that didn't fit his 8 years. "Dad, Victoria never really liked me, did she?" Richard knelt to be at his son's level. It was a conversation they had been having in fragments, as Ethan was able to process. "She made very bad choices, son. Choices that hurt you and many other people." "I know." Ethan looked at his own hands. "But if she hadn't been bad, Gloria would never have found me. And I would never have heard the wind chime." Richard blinked, surprised by the child's simple wisdom. "How did you learn to think like that?" Ethan shrugged. "Gloria taught me. She said sometimes the worst things lead to the best people." Richard looked at Gloria over his son's head. There was gratitude there, but also something more. Something neither of them was ready to name yet. "Gloria is a very wise woman," Richard said softly. A week later, the Harrison Foundation for Pediatric Diagnostics was officially inaugurated. Gloria was on stage, next to Richard, before an audience of doctors, journalists, and families who had been through similar experiences. The foundation's goal was simple: to offer free second medical opinions for children diagnosed with irreversible conditions, to ensure that no child was kept sick out of greed. Gloria approached the microphone. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was firm. A year ago, I was sleeping on the streets. I had lost my career, my family, my dignity. The system I had dedicated my life to serving had spit me out. She paused, looking at the audience. I could have given up. Many times I thought about giving up. But every time I saw a child entering that hospital, I remembered why I had become a doctor. It wasn't for the diplomas or the prestige. It was for the moment when a child hears their mother's voice for the first time. For the instant when the world stops being silent. Her voice caught. She took a deep breath. Ethan Harrison gave me back that purpose. His father gave me back my dignity. And now together, we're going to ensure that no child is left in silence because of the greed of those who should protect them. The audience applauded. Ethan, seated in the front row, clapped louder than everyone, marveling at the sound of his own applause. That night, after the guests had left and the mansion fell silent, Richard found Gloria on the veranda, looking at the stars. "You saved my son," he said. "And I don't even know how to thank you." Gloria turned to him. "You've already thanked me. More than I deserved." "You deserved much more." Richard approached. "Gloria, I spent years surrounded by people who wanted my money. Victoria, Morrison, consultants, parasites in expensive suits. And the only person who really cared about my son was someone I would have ignored on the street." Gloria smiled sadly. "Most people ignore. It's easier not to see. I don't want to be most people. Not anymore." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the crickets and the wind in the trees. "Do you know what Ethan asked me yesterday?" Gloria finally said. "What?" "If you were going to get married again. He said he wanted a mom who made noise." Richard laughed, a genuine laugh, something he hadn't done in a long time. "Noise." He said Victoria always walked in silence, like she was hiding. He wants someone who laughs loud, who sings in the shower, who makes the house feel alive. Richard looked at Gloria for a long moment. "And you? Do you make noise?" Gloria raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Harrison, I survived 3 years on the streets. I learned to make enough noise to scare anyone." He smiled. "Maybe that's exactly what this house needs." Inside the mansion, Ethan was at his bedroom window, watching the two on the veranda. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could see his father smiling in a way he had never seen before. He pressed his hand against the cold glass and whispered to himself, practicing the words that were still new in his mouth. "Thank you, Gloria." Across the garden, as if she had heard through walls and distance, Gloria looked up and waved. Ethan waved back, laughing. The sound of his own laughter was still the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. Sometimes, miracles don't come from luxury hospitals or famous doctors. Sometimes, they come from the people the world discarded. From the hands no one wanted to hold. From the eyes that can still see when everyone else has given up looking. Gloria Dawson lost everything. And in losing everything, she found what really mattered. Ethan Harrison lived in silence for 8 years. And when he finally heard, the first thing he learned was that love makes more noise than any word. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove a simple truth. Sometimes, the person who seems to have nothing is exactly the one who has everything to give.